Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Black Four-Leaf Clover, from Check-In. Chapter 81. As the wooden door closed, the atmosphere of the narrow room suddenly changed. I want to know who you are. Sekele said straight to the point. What else do you know? What do you know? Kuroba nodded with a smile, and stood up suddenly on the bed under her persuasive gaze. The sudden action made Sekele startled, and subconsciously closed her beautiful eyes. She has been a bird for 500 years, but the idea of seeing no evil seems to be touched after the curse is lifted. However, as soon as he closed his eyes, Sekele felt something was wrong. A big warm hand covered her head first, and gently kneaded it recklessly. Don't worry, I don't have any malice towards you, it's still the same rhetoric, I'm the mentor to destroy devil, maybe I can help you recover Lumial. Kuroba chuckled and pulled his hand back. By the way, next time don't casually enter the room of the opposite sex, otherwise the lonely man and widow are in the same room, and the girls will suffer losses. After leaving these words, Kuroba turned over the window and left. The first thing he has to do now is to ask Yami if there is any way to go to the office where Golden Dawn and Vengeance are located to sign in and complete this main task. Seeing the figure that disappeared in the blink of an eye, Sekele couldn't help touching her head. Not to mention 500 years ago, even 500 years ago, as a nobleman, she was demoted to be the attendant of the Prince Lumial because of her incompetence in Feng-Gen magic. The relationship between the two is very good, and they often explore the truth of magic. However, the identity of the prince is obvious, and this kind of intimacy will never fall on her. As for ordinary people, looking at her expression of refusal to be thousands of miles away, they avoid her even more. It can be said that the unscrupulous invasion just now made Han Kele's heart, which had been dusty for 500 years, tremble inexplicably. Why? How did it end so quickly? Isn't something wonderful going to happen? The closed door couldn't bear the movement of Vanessa and the three of them pressing on the door to eavesdrop, and was suddenly pushed open. Looking at Kuroba, who had disappeared for a long time, Kayakausha and Nuo-Al secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Sekele came back to his senses, took a cold look, switched his form directly, turned back into a repelling bird, and quickly flew out of the window. What's wrong? Was she angry just now? Did we get in the way of something good happening to her? Vanessa hiccuped. He hurriedly turned around and planned to perform a chuck kill, and was going to take Mimosa and Nuo-Al back to educate them again. However, looking back, the figure had already disappeared. Boom! A dull impact suddenly sounded. The closed wooden door was kicked open by Yami, who was holding a cigarette and pulling his trousers. Bastard Finral, dare to spend the night outside, so that I almost can't even catch up with the tuba. As a dedicated toilet guide, Finral has gone further and further on Yami's large health. When Yami tightened his trousers, looked at the tree pole not far away with a cigarette in his mouth, he couldn't help raising his eyebrows, and said, I came to the door so early I thought you wouldn't be able to get away. Do you want to practice? Yami looked at the two bamboo knives placed next to him, and that posture obviously had been planned for a long time. Seeing the persistence, knowing that as a close combat mage, Yami is undoubtedly bitter about such a precious magic sword falling into the hands of Kuroba. Since I can't get it, of course I plan to train Kuroba well so as not to waste this powerful weapon. Captain Yami, I actually know kendo. Kuroba touched the tip of his nose helplessly, added, no 10 tricks. However, this time I came here to ask, is there a way for you to enter Golden Dawn? For example, go to Vengeance's office. Do you know how to use kendo? Yami frowned, and said, you don't intend to perfuse me, do you? What's the use of kendo? Look at you, but you're just a show. By the way, why are you going to Golden Dawn, and why are you running to Vengeance's office? Regarding Kuroba's special request, Yami said with a confused face, you kid, don't forget what happened yesterday, even Vengeance's personality can be raised by you in anger, I can't help it, let alone I have no face to rush out the door. As the strongest and the worst, it is also the head of the magician group under the command of the boss of Julius. Yami really didn't have much face, and went to those high-end places to rush through the door. Looking at the disappointed Kuroba, Yami didn't continue talking nonsense, and grabbed the bamboo knife placed aside with his right hand. The two bamboo knives were directly pulled by the air, and flew straight towards the two of them. Yami was already familiar with the road, Satansho took the bamboo knife into his hand and pointed to the ground obliquely. Then subconsciously looked at Kuroba. He wanted to know, if Kuroba said that he knew one move of swordsmanship, was it perfunctory or did he really understand it? Captain Kuroba, you can't even catch a bamboo knife, Yami said with a joking smile. However, Yami's eyes lit up when he saw Kuroba deftly grabbing the bamboo knife and inserting it into his left waist. If he remembers correctly, this is the standard posture of iai/ and sword slash. To achieve this attitude, one must at least practice swordsmanship and go deep into one's bones. Captain Kuroba, your posture is indeed very standard, but I still want to try to see if you really know the way of swordsmanship. Yami's eyes lit up, and he couldn't help being interested. When looking at Kuroba, he couldn't help but clench the bamboo knife tightly with his 10 fingers, raised his head high and held his breath. In his eyes, it is necessary to further find out the details of Kuroba. This temptation is essential. Headmaster Yami is very kind. If I want to refuse, it seems a bit inappropriate. Kuroba smiled and clenched the bamboo knife around his waist. However, Captain Yami, I still intend to remind you that this move is a murderous knife technique. A one-shot kill. Yami couldn't help being stunned. In his eyes, the knife is of course a sharp weapon for killing people, and the knife technique may also become the knife technique for killing people. It mainly depends on what kind of thoughts the knife holder has. Now, as soon as Kuroba opened his mouth, he said that his own sword was a way of killing people, which made Yami a little puzzled. However, Kuroba didn't pay attention to Yami's thoughts. He wants to do it now, but also to try the thunder-breathing method, how big it is in this world. Messy thoughts flashed in Kuroba's mind, which came from the system, providing all the information about the thunder-breathing method, and quickly circulated in his mind. The originally messy breathing pattern changed the moment Kuroba gripped the scabbard tightly. At the same time, under Yami's gaze, his eyes slowly closed tightly. The body leaned forward slightly, the waist and spine tensed like a dragon, and the muscles gradually filled up. Breathing began to breathe out in a special way, and the crackling current flowed through every cell in the body. At this moment, Kuroba felt his body and breath gradually reach a balance. The moment when the electric arc circulating in the cell catches up with the electric arc of breathing. An indescribably fierce aura surged straight up centered on Kuroba. In an instant, Yami, who was standing on the target, suddenly changed his expression. Before he had time to think about it, he quickly activated the magic collar or opened it directly. Captain, something is wrong. Gosha's indifferent call came from afar. Stir up the oppressive atmosphere that had been stagnant. The chi mechanism locked on Yami's body disappeared in an instant. Holding the bamboo knife tightly, Kuroba leaned forward, tensing his muscles like a tiger and leopard, and slowly opened his eyes. At the moment just now, he fell into a mysterious feeling. It may take time to get used to this thunder-breathing method for the first time. However, Kuroba believes that it will be faster to enter the state and posture with the second cast. Captain Yami, look at Gosha's expression. I'm afraid something serious has happened. Let's put this discussion aside for now. Kuroba returned the bamboo knife with his backhand, and said, however, Captain Yami, your magic neighborhood is really not small, the stronghold of Bull. Ahem, can I take this as your compliment? Yami coughed dryly, showing a hint of embarrassment. He obviously proposed the sparring. As soon as Kuroba put on a posture, he couldn't help but cast his magic field. It would be embarrassing to say this. However, thinking back to the scene that happened just now, as if he was being stared at by tigers and leopards, it sent chills down his spine. Yami firmly believed that his subconscious actions just now were not wrong. That's the way to kill. It is precisely because of this that Yami feels eager to try. Perhaps this is the so-called happiness of seeing a hunter. Captain Yami, Captain Black. Kuroba, Gosha said indifferently. As a prisoner who was pulled out of the prison by Yami, Gosha's temper, except for his sister, did not care about other people and things at all from the beginning. Now he ran back suddenly and said something bad. It is enough to prove that I am afraid that something big has really happened. Gosha, what are you talking about? Yami glanced at Gosha, who was still wandering around on the magic broom, took out a cigarette and stuffed it into his mouth. Watching this scene, Kuroba touched the tip of his nose helplessly. He was already familiar with the weirdos of the Black Bulls. Especially in terms of work efficiency. Leader, I'm on vacation today, and I'm rushing back to see my lovely sister. If you want to see her, I can leave you the photo. Ghosh showed a demented face and a nosebleed as soon as he opened his mouth. However, after this situation continued for a while, Ghosh did not forget the purpose of coming back, and told a big event that made Kuroba's eyes light up. The leader of Yami, Finral, broke a valuable vase in the rich area, and was caught by the patrolling Golden Dawn team, and asked our leader to redeem him. Ghosh said after thinking for a while. Break precious vases. Yami couldn't help being startled, and said, Finral is a space magister, can he break things? The space magic possessed by Finral is biased toward assistance. Except for the place he has been to, the space wormhole that can spread the wings of fallen angels from a long distance. The places within his line of sight can also be expanded at any time. If an object falls to the ground in front of Finral, he can definitely transfer to the hand in an instant. Captain Yami, I'm afraid this matter is aimed at me. Kuroba smiled warmly. I was thinking of an excuse to go to Golden Dawn, but they gave me a chance instead. Yami couldn't help being startled, and said, Boy, you don't plan to make a fuss, do you? That's Golden Dawn, the strongest magic knight order in the four-leaf clover kingdom, do you need someone? Manpower. Facing Yami's fear that the world will not be chaotic, Kuroba couldn't help but smile and looked at the repulsive bird on the tree not far away. Nero, ask Henry to come with me. Take Henry. Yami was stunned for a moment, then patted Kuroba's shoulder and said, You kid, you're still the same, but I've thought about playing wild in that place for a long time. Seeing the two who were about to form a team to make trouble, they decided to give up. Is this still the magic knights she knows? However, what Han Kele cared more about was Kuroba's address just now. With flapping wings, Sekko landed directly in front of Kuroba, switching to human form. This time, Sekole obviously did not distribute benefits. The first time I encountered a curse, I changed into a posture of repelling birds, because I was caught off guard and couldn't seal the clothes synchronously. Now that he has mastered the active form switch, he has sealed it together with his clothes. Why do you call me Nero? My name is Sekle, please respect me. Sekle stared coldly. However, as soon as the words were said, Kuroba's big warm hands were still the first to catch the eye, covering her head domineeringly. I am also your savior. Sekle is the former you, Nero is the current you. Kuroba said with a smile. You. Nero became angry, and shook Kuroba's hand, looked at Kuroba with a serious face, snorted coldly, turned and flew towards the castle. Looking at the distant figure, Yami puffed out a cigarette in his mouth and said, Commander, is this the little girlfriend you picked up 500 years ago? It looks pretty good too. However, wait a minute, you can't make too much noise, otherwise it will be difficult for me to explain to Boss Julius. Captain Yami, don't worry, we are all reasonable people. Kuroba smiled and raised his fist. With a backhand shot on Grimoire, the cold wind immediately blows away. Ice creation magic, ice bird. The cold wind suddenly rose, and immediately plundered the free moisture in the surrounding air directly, turning into a huge ice bird of 7 or 8 meters, spreading its wings and soaring in the void. Looking at this scene, Ghosh couldn't help but glance at the flying broom in his hand. All of a sudden, the nose was bleeding, showing a dementia look. This ice bird looks so cool, if Marlene sees it, she will definitely like it. Black. Ha. Captain, are you looking for me? Henry's voice came all of a sudden. Looking at Nero's icy little face, he brought Henry to land on top of the ice bird. Without any hesitation, Kuroba grabbed her hand and urged the ice bird to gallop away. Facing the opportunity of the Golden Dawn, Kuroba will not let it go easily. Watching the group leave, Yi Jung planned to go back and find a place to continue the building. However, when he saw the bamboo knives scattered on the ground, and recalled the killing kendo that made his hair stand on end just now, he decided to follow and have a look at Song. Golden Dawn, as the strongest magic knight group in the four-leaf clover kingdom, is even more noble group. Therefore, the setting of the headquarters, Yi Qian Li's, is always located in the aristocratic area. It also took more than half an hour under Kuroba's full flight to go from the civilian area where the Black Bull is located to the noble area. When he saw the Golden Dawn stronghold that looked like a group of small palaces below, Kuroba smiled and turned his head, looked at Henry and said, Have you memorized this terrain? Nero couldn't help being taken aback. apparently a bit puzzled by Kuroba's question. Hey, you, Captain, I have written it all down, Henry said intermittently. This way of speaking was indeed a bit uncomfortable for Kuroba. He picked out his ears casually, looked at the stronghold below, and urged the ice bird to circle and fall. Deputy leader of Langris, the Black Bull has arrived. A female member knocked on the door of Langris's room. Looking at him who was still wearing his nightgown, he couldn't help but said, Deputy Captain Langris, do you need to rush over now? Hurry up. Langris stretched his waist and said with a dry smile, no need, let them proceed according to the plan. I want to take a shower and change clothes, and then have breakfast. There should be time to go out to clean up the mess and save their lives. The huge ice bird hovered in the sky, passed the gate in an instant, and landed on the huge square. Finral, who was originally held in an iron cage, couldn't help but watch this scene. Captain Kuroba, why are you here? I'm so touched. Finral grabbed the iron railing and shouted anxiously. However, you suddenly landed on the square, which is considered a provocation to Golden Dawn. The 9 Magic Knight orders all have common default rules. Any visitor needs to ask to see him at the gate, and if he breaks in at will, that is a provocation. Right now, Kuroba swagger, directly crossed the gate and landed on the square, which undoubtedly broke the rules. Then what do you mean? You want me to quit now, and then wait for them to let go? Kuroba smiled and dispersed the ice bird. I think, if you go on like this, I'm afraid you can't enter this gate until you starve to death. Or do you think the people here are willing to let us go out and go through the process again? Finral froze for a moment, looking at a group of people walking out of the darkness. He instantly understood what was going on. Whether it's a vase, or letting the leader redeem people, it's CHFH a game. Captain, you, run away quickly, Langris is my younger brother, he won't do anything to me. Seeing more and more people around, Finral suddenly became anxious. I'm sorry, everyone from the Black Bulls, you trespassed on the Golden Dawn, we, as members of the group, need to invite you out. A middle-aged man with blonde hair, wearing a Golden Dawn shawl, and aristocratic costumes lined up with the crowd get out. For the rest, there are 7 or 8 followers behind him. It seems that his status is not low. ALK Della, this is the new leader of our Black Bull, they are not malicious. Finral was in a hurry. Ark Della, Kuroba raised his brows, he remembered this passerby, and he played a role in the original book. In the latter King's Choice Knights, defeated by Yuno, he is a master magister who is good at sand magic. Oh, it turns out that he is the arrogant guy who refused our leader's invitation. Alk Della raised his brows and said jokingly, however, as a noble group, it is already a disgrace to let a low-level citizen join, and let another come to be our deputy head, that's even more tainted. Today, let me, the elite of the Golden Dawn, guide you, a refugee. Only aristocrats can be strong, and it is not comparable to the Aster killer whale Xerex. While talking, Ark Della walked out in a row. Seeing him, the elite of the Golden Dawn, personally make a move, the members gathered in the arena suddenly became excited. Let's go, as your supervisor, you must improve your strength as soon as possible, otherwise you, as a subordinate, will only slow down the pace of our Golden Dawn, and at the same time make the nobles fool. Klaus, who was standing a little far away on the 2nd floor of the stronghold, held up his glasses and urged. He is also an aristocrat, but among the aristocrats, there are high and low points. Klaus is obviously a low-level aristocrat, so he often forces himself to become stronger. Senior Klaus, I want to see. Yuno looked at the more dignified atmosphere in the square, and said in a deep voice, I don't think he came here to save people at all. If it's really to save people, why doesn't he take the legal route, let the Magic Emperor put pressure on it, or use money to redeem him? Klaus was stunned. He obviously didn't think too deeply about this. At least he is standing on the commanding heights, and has only one opinion on any issue. Golden Dawn, among the 9 Magic Knights, is the strongest existence. No one dares to provoke. Hearing that Yuno's analysis was clear and logical, he immediately asked urgently, Yuno, you mean they are here to make trouble? For this idea, Klaus didn't want to admit it, nor did he want to think about it. After all, in his eyes, absolutely no one would dare to make trouble in Golden Dawn. However, before Yuno could respond, a playful voice came out of nowhere. There are exactly 10 people here. Well, it's too troublesome to fight one by one, I want to fight 10. The small voice of the voice echoed in the huge square like a magic voice poured into it, and there was no way to dissipate for a long time. 10 for 1. Arkdella was taken aback for a moment, and then burst out laughing. Little ghost, do you really think that this place is still an unpopular place like the magic arena? This is the strongest magic knight order in the kingdom of Golden Dawn, 4-leaf clover. The awe-inspiring voice echoed in the square. Nero, who was standing behind Kuroba, looked back at Kuroba and walked straight to Finral. Go aside quickly, do you want to be beaten? Looking at Nero with a slightly disgusted expression on his face, Finral was taken aback for a moment but subconsciously nodded after recovering. Exhibited the wings of the fallen angel, and walked out of the prison. He was taken away by the Golden Dawn, and suffered a lot. But the magic book on Finral's body was not confiscated. What's more, Finral's mind is now filled with only one question. Where did the new leader abduct this cute girl? Seeing Nero and Finral walk away, Henry glanced left and right, and quickly followed. For a moment, the huge square fell into an inexplicable dead silence. The actions of the three of Nero clearly affirmed Kuroba's arrogant idea of hitting 10. Arkdella, what should we do? Shilan, who was standing behind him, was the first to lose his composure. The scene in front of him, anywhere, would be Kai Guouo's slap in the face. You bastard, what else can I do? Of course I'll throw them all out, don't you all? Arkdella roared. Arrogant, on this square, we have fought countless times, and we can defeat any arrogant in an instant. Sand creation magic sand sentry. The magic book glowing with yellow light was quickly opened in the air beside Arkdella. In the open space where Kuroba was standing, a large piece of yellow sand soon flew out. Directly condensed into a huge desert sentinel with a height of more than 3 meters. The moment the sand axe in his hand was raised above his head, he slashed down towards Kuroba's back with force. The sudden blow was extremely fierce and unparalleled, and the speed was so fast that people could react in a short time. It can be said that Arkdella has been in Golden Dawn for so many years, and has trained countless times on this square. Clearly knowing which place can make him condense into the sand sentinel the fastest. Which place is the easiest to sneak attack successfully. Seeing Kuroba standing there motionless as if stunned. A ferocious smile flashed across Arkdella's face. In his eyes, Kuroba had forced his way into the Golden Dawn camp, and even if he was severely injured, it would be easy to justify afterwards. What's more, in yesterday's rumors, he heard that Kuroba's defense is very strong. That means, he can attack at will. Boom. There was a dull collision sound, and the separation sounded. A large cloud of dust was set off, directly covering Kuroba's figure. The ground of the square under his feet shattered and spread apart. Witnessing this scene, Arkdella showed a gleam of joy, and said with a big smile, sure enough, he is a rookie with no combat experience. Although, I heard yesterday that this little devil's defense is very strong, but our Golden Dawn is the strongest magic knight group in 4-leaf clover. Shilan, you can find Owen for him, and report an injury to him, and I'll pay Arkdella bear it. Leaving this sentence behind, Arkdella turned around and planned to leave. However, as soon as he turned around, all he could see were difficult and unbelievable faces. Senior Arkdella, be careful. Yuno exclaimed anxiously. Arkdella's complexion changed, and she hurriedly looked back. The scene that caught his eye caused his pupils to shrink suddenly, and the sockets of his eyes almost stared fiercely. The sharp desert blade was held by Kuroba at a distance of a few feet, and the skin that glowed with the color of black steel shone with a penetrating light. I said, let 10 of you hit me one, and you just can't come, wasting my time. Kuroba smiled and nodded, looked at Arkdella, and suddenly exerted strength with the 5 fingers of his right hand. Boom. There was a dull crashing sound suddenly, and the thick desert axe shattered in response. The pupils of everyone who witnessed this scene shrank suddenly. At this moment, they finally knew that Kuroba's defense was not very strong, but extremely strong. They can smash the attack of the desert sentinel with bare hands, but they dare not even think about it. This horse is a monster. By the way, you tried my defense just now, then it's your turn. Kuroba smiled and raised his right index finger. As the cold wind blows, the center of the spoon spins rapidly. The speed was getting faster and faster, and by the time everyone realized it, a centimeter-sized sphere had already begun to form. Feeling the compressed magical power, many people showed a trace of inexplicable confusion on their faces. It's just that this idea had just sprouted in their minds, and the next scene they saw shook their nerves. Crackling thunder lights bloomed at the tip of Kuroba's left finger. The violent scene caused the pupils of everyone present to shrink. One body with two attributes. This is beyond their cognition. However, what made them even more unbelievable was that when the lightning emerged from Kuroba's fingertips, it directly pierced into the frosty sphere. Accompanied by the infusion of thunder light, the two extremely compressed magical powers reacted in an instant. Under the crisp crackling sound, it gives people the feeling that it is as bright as a ghostly star. The mana fluctuations diffused directly distorted the surrounding air. Dual attribute, magic, Yami, who was standing on a tree branch in the distance, couldn't help but fell to the ground with a cigarette in his mouth. He knew in advance that Kuroba had dual attribute magic yesterday. However, it never occurred to me that Kuroba could superimpose attribute magic. This power is not as simple as 1 + 1. Okay, this is the first time I've used this small meatball. As for the power, I don't know. Kuroba looked at the finished product in his hand with some satisfaction. With the first experience, the second attempt is undoubtedly a matter of course. However, as Kuroba said, he doesn't know how powerful this is. Sensing the terrifying fluctuations emanating from above, Kuroba suddenly raised his head and looked at Arcdella. Sorry, I'm really in a hurry. Since you don't want to fight 1 out of 10, let me fight 10 out of 10. Please be defensive. Kuroba smiled lightly. The next moment, the ice thunder ball on the index finger of his right hand was suddenly thrown out. Hum. The sharp and ear-piercing sound of vibrating air exploded in an instant. Wherever it passes along the way, the air seems to be stirred by invisible hands. In the short distance of tens of meters, half of it passed in the blink of an eye. Looking at this violent scene, there is also that dangerous breath that makes one's spine chill. Arcdella's complexion changed, and he quickly removed the sand sentry behind Kuroba. As the elite of Golden Dawn chief, he certainly has stronger moves. Arrogant brat, I want to see if your attack is stronger, or my absolute defense is stronger. Arcdella roared. Sand-heavy armor. Boom. The endless quicksand was reversing, and a large expanse of sand poured out quickly 5 or 6 meters in front of Arcdella. The next moment, he turned into a sand soldier 5 or 6 meters tall, holding a big knife and a giant shield, and wearing heavy armor. It can be said that compared with the sand sentinel just now, it's completely like a blood cow with a costume, and a hero who just came out of the spring. Facing the incoming meatballs, there was no trace of fancy, and they collided head-on. Don't want. An exclamation came suddenly. Arcdella looked in a hurry, and the target turned out to be the head of the silver-winged vulture, the current patriarch of the Silpha royal family, who was stationed not far away. Now suddenly there is a no-no, should I say it to myself, or to the refugees in front of me? However, this messy thought just flashed through Arcdella's mind. The scene that entered his eyes made his pupils shrink suddenly. The moment when the thick giant shield collided with the ball like a baby's fist. A thunderous explosion echoed loudly. Boom. The violent air wave rolled back like a cold wave. The raging lightning turned into endless hairy needles, smashing everything frozen into pieces. The first to bear the brunt of touching the sand-heavy armor was instantly frozen up. The next moment, it collapsed like a piece of paper. The wild explosion wave spread quickly towards Arcdella and others in a crushing attitude. Wherever they pass along the way, not to mention the earth, even the moisture contained in the air is directly frozen. The violent scene caused the pupils of Arcdella and others to contract suddenly. However, at such a close distance, it is simply impossible to use powerful defensive means to stop the incoming attack. The only thing that can be done is to use some simple magic defense methods to stop him. He could only watch the blow, which crashed into his body. Just like the heavy sand giant soldier just now, his body was crushed by the violent thunder light. Boom. The violent air wave instantly occupied the pupils of Arcdella and others, and the so-called defense was easily smashed like paper. The huge impact swept away like a huge wave. The gigantic square of a kilometer was covered in half in an instant, and even more powerful, they rushed straight to Yuno and Cross on the high platform. Feeling the momentum of the frozen thousands of miles, Yuno and Cross's expressions changed drastically. Before they had time to think, they frantically stimulated the magic power like desperately. Wind creation magic, Great Storm Vortex. Steel creation magic, Steel City Armor. The moment the violent wind turned into a vortex, and the steel wall quickly transformed. The aftermath of the tyrannical impact also slammed into it. Boom! There was a thunderous collision sound, and the huge wind and waves caused Yuno and Klaus to fly upside down 4 or 5 meters away. Finally hit the wall, barely stopped the figure. Hastily opened his eyes, looked at the frozen steel wall in front of him, and smashed most of it. His face turned pale all of a sudden. If this wave of impact hadn't been weakened one after another in front, I'm afraid that it would directly face up, and it would be almost the same as the frozen scene in front of us. It's okay to turn into an ice sculpture directly, in case it is shattered by the thunder light contained in the explosion wave. That was a dead body. Yuno, hurry up and save them with me, Alpdella. Klaus woke up suddenly. Pulling Yuno, he quickly rushed to the battlefield below. However, as soon as they set foot on it, they could see that the huge mercury shield and some remaining space vortexes blocked Alpdella and others. Facing Kuroba's strength, Arcdella, who was the first to take the lead, fell to the ground with a frightened expression at this moment. There is only a small amount of Lois land left on that side, and I don't know what got wet, even the crotch under the crotch is no exception. Many of the remaining 9 people also fainted from fright. The rest looked at the scene of the frozen square, and Kuroba standing there with a warm smile on his face, and a thought flashed in his mind. This is a madman. If no one comes to rescue them, I'm afraid that after this blow, they will not only know the magic skin. Otherwise, it is either dead or injured. It can be said that if this scene gets out, the elite who kept talking about the strongest magic knights in the 4-leaf clover kingdom a moment ago, he was taken by a bunch of meatballs. It is still a new regiment leader who just took over yesterday. I am afraid that he has already been stunned. You bastard, how dare you play wild in Golden Dawn? A roar came from the stronghold tower. Looking at the frozen square below, he was changing his clothes just now, and he hadn't even buttoned it, his arms were still shaking. Originally, he planned to take a shower, change clothes and have breakfast before going on stage, but he was undoubtedly startled by the terrifying aura emanating from Kuroba's meatball. If he is not good at space magic, he has the magic power infinitely close to the zero domain. I'm afraid, before the attack hits Arcdella, it is impossible to open multiple space barriers at all. Most importantly, there is also the help from Nozel, the leader of the silver-winged vulture. Deputy Leader Langris, do you still want to eat breakfast? The female member who was also pale from fright said tremblingly. What to eat? Get the hell out of here. Langris growled with a distorted expression. As the deputy head of the Golden Dawn, he is a great aristocrat second only to the 3 royal families and the current patriarch of the Vod family. When did he ever try such a shame? It was originally planned to make the arrogant people who despise their Golden Dawn pay a bloody price. Right now, he was almost wiped out by the opponent with one move in public. Langris, who stayed behind in the base camp, not only felt that he was shooting himself in the foot. Still a shame, Deputy Captain Langris, seeing that you are disheveled and accompanied by a beautiful woman, won't it frighten you soft? Kuroba smiled and looked at Langris. If so, I'm afraid it's a great crime. Langris suddenly became angry. Glancing at the situation in the field, he roared angrily, okay, very good, since you are going to make trouble for me, I want to see how confident you are in playing wild in Golden Dawn. There was a slight vibration in the air, and a space wormhole was directly torn out the next moment. Langris stepped forward with a distorted expression, and appeared directly in front of Arcdella. Glancing at the wet ground with disgust, he gritted his teeth and said, Klaus, and the poor and lowly people, take these trash down for me. Facing the enraged Langris, Yuno's expression changed slightly, because he was upset, but Klaus gave him a wink and quickly stepped forward to help change the battlefield. For a moment, the huge square fell into inexplicable depression. Nozel standing on the giant mercury bird's face sank, and he jumped onto the square. After looking at Kuroba one more time, he said, Deputy Captain Langris, I'm afraid there is some misunderstanding in this matter. Head of Kuroba is newly appointed, so he is not very clear about the rules, and, I think that the blow just now, the head of Kuroba has already shown mercy. Has he shown mercy? The small voice seemed to be infused with magic sound at this moment. Even Yami, who was standing on the branch of a tree watching the show, was dumbfounded. Looking at this frozen square, the scene of almost being wiped out. Now that Nozel comes out and tells them that the blow was returned with mercy, is it still alive? If this ice seal is all about being merciful, then what is the best way to do it? Give me mercy. Langris's face darkened, and said, Captain Nozel, what do you mean, should we thank him? Or, we Golden Dawn are all trash, not even a homeless person. In normal times, Langris would definitely maintain the respect he deserves for Nozer, who is the head of the regiment and even the royal family. However, the current situation does not allow him to think too much. This game was set up by him, and this disaster should also be set up by him. So he had to get this place back. Nozer remained silent. He could still vividly remember the scene of Kuroba using this move that day. According to the size of the meatball just now, it may only have 1/3 of the power of the day. In his eyes, he was indeed showing mercy. Captain Nozel, I didn't expect to disturb you, and I asked Deputy Captain Langris to meet you. Kuroba smiled and interrupted Nozel's meaning. So, I think it's necessary to clarify for you. Speaking of this, Kuroba threw the magic book backhand to Nero, and immediately took off the shallow slap on his waist. Not to mention Nero, even Nozel, Langris and the others couldn't help being stunned by the violent scene. What's happening here? Could it be that you don't even need a magic book, just rely on a broken knife, and the majestic Golden Dawn deputy head campus? Is this a joke? Captain Kuroba. Nozel frowned, hesitant to speak. However, as soon as he opened his mouth, he saw Yami landed on the field first, and said, Nozel, this is the fault of my team leader, let him solve it himself. Speaking of this, Yami took a deep breath of cigarettes, and said solemnly, Commander, are you planning to use that trick? I hope you will be merciful again. Show mercy. Is this crazy? If Kuroba is new, I don't know how deep Langris is. But Yami is also at the level of the old team leader, so he should be very clear about the strength of the genius from the Vought family, the genius of the Golden Dawn. Now not only agree with Kuroba's waywardness, but also let his subordinates show mercy. Either they are crazy, or they are crazy. Okay, very good, it really is the lawless Black Bull group among the 9 knights. I also really want to see, how can you show mercy? Langris said twice with a distorted expression. You all step down, I want to see what this so-called strongest rookie in history is capable of. Forgot to tell you, don't approach me casually, my space magic will easily cut off your hands and feet. The rolling voice echoed in the huge square. The people of Golden Dawn had already chosen to retreat, giving up enough fighting ground. Nozel, who watched this scene, subconsciously looked at Yami. Let's go. Yami walked aside with a cigarette in his mouth and said, Look carefully, the result may appear in an instant, if you are also interested in destroying Devil's tutor. Destroy Devil Mentor. Nozel's expression changed slightly, and he looked back at Kuroba. For a while, the huge square fell into an inexplicable oppressive atmosphere. That, miss, is Captain Kuroba crazy? Finral looked at Nero cautiously. Shut up, Nero replied coldly. The slender hand clenched Kuroba's grimoire. She has lived 500 years, but she is as confused as everyone else. How will Kuroba win without grimoire? Little devil, come on, I'll let you know that arrogance alone can't even pass my space magic attack net. Langris smiled ferociously, and slapped the magic book with his backhand. A steady stream of magic power was poured into it crazily, emitting powerful fluctuations of magic power, which moved the faces of the people in the field. Able to inherit the position of deputy leader in the strongest magic knight group. It's not as simple as talking about it. However, in the face of all this, Kuroba didn't seem to care at all. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, the eyes slowly closed. Holding the scabbard with his left hand, and the handle of the knife with his right hand, the muscles of the whole body tensed suddenly. Like a tiger or leopard hunting, the body leaned forward slightly. The strange movements changed the expressions of everyone in the field, even Langris was no exception. Li Lijiao, however, for Kuroba who had his first experience, whether it is the lightning circulating in the body or the activated cells, or breathing rate, at this moment, everyone and everything are patrolling simultaneously. Thunder's breath 1 type thunderbolt flash. Ha! Exhaling softly, the moment he suddenly opened his eyes, the tense muscles of his legs exploded like cannonballs. Boom! Lightning flashes, as fast as thunder. Wherever they passed along the way, in the eyes of everyone, they could only vaguely see a golden thunder flashing past. Wait for everything to react. The scene that entered the scene caused everyone's pupils to shrink suddenly. Puff! A stream of scarlet blood, like a blood arrow, splashed out on Langris's left arm. The flying severed limbs caused everyone's pupils to shrink suddenly. Even Yami, who was already mentally prepared, was no exception. Too fast. Without opening the magic field, even Kuroba's figure could not be accurately captured. If caught off guard, the underestimated opponent may be the same as Langris. Distinguish high and low directly. However, this time it was not a severed arm, but a decapitated body. Looking at it, I don't know when it crossed Langris and appeared behind him, Kuroba, who also maintained the posture of drawing the sword at the beginning. There was a series of swallowing saliva sounds. Captain, you are really merciful. Yami took a puff of smoke, looked at Finral and said, hurry up and bring old man Owen here, the medical expenses will be covered by Captain Kuroba. Quote. Paid for medical expenses. Hearing this familiar sentence, the members of Golden Dawn present, and even Arkdella, who dropped the harsh words at the beginning, turned livid. At the beginning, he faced Kuroba, but also dropped this harsh word. It's a pity that this face was not only slapped too fast, but also slapped too hard. Even Langris, who is the deputy captain, had his arm broken at will. My arm. Langris grabbed the severed arm and roared with a distorted expression. The magic power dormant in his body, accompanied by the influence of mood swings, exploded suddenly. It turned into a huge wave and swept away. Feeling this far out of the ordinary aura, the expressions of the people present suddenly changed dramatically. This unpleasant magical power has reached the level of the zero domain. Yami frowned and looked at Langris. Nozair on the side is no exception. There are also high and low points in the zero domain, but it is necessary to break through from the first-class magic power to the level of the zero domain. That can't be done by mere anger alone. Trash. 1 and 2 are trash. I want to show you that Tien is a special existence. Langris raised his head abruptly, and under the distorted face, majestic magic power surged out, which had already blocked the injury on his arm. The next moment, his eyes suddenly turned and locked on Kuroba. The pitch-black magic balls, like will-o'-the-wisps, quickly bloomed around Langris. There are hundreds of dense gestures. Once it is really covered by this kind of attack, I am afraid it will definitely become a hornet's nest. No, it should be said that it will be bombarded so that there is not even scum left. Captain Yami, there seems to be something wrong with the Langris situation, do we need to intervene? Nozel couldn't help but suggested. If we talk about the confrontation just now, it is still within the controllable range. So next, Langris means madness. But enough to kill people. What's more, Langris now feels like he has no intention of showing mercy. Nozel, wait a minute. Yami held a cigarette, smiled and raised his hand. Hey, Captain Kuroba, do you need help? Help. Kuroba glanced at Langris, who ran away as he imagined, smiled and shook his head, looked at the tower at the other end, and said, I wonder if this is King's office. This time Kuroba played a bit high, but the main purpose was not forgotten. In a short period of time, it is undoubtedly the fastest shortcut to improve your strength and complete the main task of signing in. Vengeance's office. Yami was stunned for a moment, with a cigarette in his mouth, and after thinking for a moment, he said, where should it be, but, in this case, asking such an irrelevant question, do you respect the enemy, Commander? In the face of Yami's divine reply, the people present, even Nozair, were stunned. Did the two heads of the Black Bulls have the wrong focus? Or are their nerves not big enough? No, I really want to respect him, and I also want to tell him that there is one thing in this world that he can't break by shouting like this. Kuroba withdrew his gaze, looked up with a smile and said, at the same time, I also want to measure the distance, whether a punch from here can send him flying to the high tower hundreds of meters away. Speaking of this, the smile on Kuroba's face became even bigger, and the moment he took a step with his right foot, the zero-domain magic pressure dormant in the body was suddenly detonated. Deputy Captain Langris, we can continue. Boom. With one step down, the cells in Kuroba's body were quickly activated to the extreme, crackling lightning arcs crazily splashed and swirled. The whole person turned into a thunderbolt and disappeared in place out of thin air. Lightning. This is the high-speed movement method mastered by Luxas in Fairy Tail. In a short distance, the distance can be shortened instantly. With the distance of 7 or 8 meters between him and Langris, the speed at which he was moving was just in the blink of an eye. This is faster. An even more absurd thought flashed through everyone's minds. Could it be that he really told Yami just now that the newcomer in front of him is showing mercy? Langris's distorted expression froze all of a sudden, and he forgot to roar. He hurriedly turned around and looked to the side. A domineering fist covered in dark armor and wrapped around a thunderbolt struck down towards his right arm in a gesture of tearing the air. Dragon Slayer magic. Uppercut of the Thunder Dragon. Boom. One punch thunder burst. When the violent thunder force was released, Langris's entire arm was broken off. The huge power was released, and the whole person flew across the sky like a cannonball towards the tower hundreds of meters away. The violent scene made everyone's eyes widen, and their pupils contracted to the extreme. Faced with that blow that was as fast as a thunderbolt, even Langris, who was fighting, was full of disbelief. Puff! A mouthful of blood came out of his mouth, turning into a blood mist that filled the sky. Langris, who flew upside down like a sandbag, glanced at it, and roared ferociously with his broken arm in a terrifying gesture. No, I have no chance of losing to a refugee. Wings of the fallen angel, dead space. Roaring like thunder, hundreds of black space spheres that had just disappeared condensed out of thin air again. The next moment, it fell towards Kuroba like a torrential rain. Faced with this sudden blow, everyone's nerves suddenly tightened. What surprised them the most was that Langris, who was so seriously injured, was able to stay awake and display such crazy attack methods. This seems a little weird. What a powerful move. Kuroba smiled warmly. Under the black space sphere attacking all over the sky, it looks a bit infiltrating. The moment Huo-ran raised his head, the muscles of his feet suddenly tensed to the extreme, and the voices that fell on everyone's ears hit the depths of people's souls. I said, the only attack in the world is fast but not broken, and you don't even open the magic field. Am I too weak, or am I overestimating you, and you don't even know the magic field? Boom. Step out. Kuroba combined shave, lightning, and breath of thunder together. With the help of the system's powerful knowledge endowment. Everything is a matter of course. Coupled with the magic field, it can be reached within 10 meters in an instant, and within 20 meters, within the blink of an eye. Facing the space sphere falling from the sky, Kuroba just stepped out, and the whole person disappeared in place first. Boom. All the attacks poured down on where Kuroba was standing in an instant. Overturned by the violent air waves, a ghostly figure appeared in front of Langris first. Without any flamboyance, the 5 fingers tightened suddenly, entangled with Lei Guang's right fist, and directly punched Langris's abdomen. Boom. There was a dull thunderous impact sound, accompanied by a sudden swing of Kuroba's right hand. Like a cannonball, Langris' car flies backwards towards the tower in the distance. The distance of 100 or 200 meters seems to be infinitely shortened at this moment. Boom. The walls of the tower collapsed, and the debris flew, revealing an office that had become extremely messy. Seeing Langris, who was knocked into the air again, the people present were dumbfounded. Even Nozel, who always had a cold and proud face, couldn't help raising his brows, and seemed moved by it. This kid is right. Our magisters are very capable, but once the speed of casting spells cannot keep up, the winning rate will drop significantly when someone gets close. Yami took a puff of his cigarette. This sentence that the world's attack can only be broken quickly is quite reasonable. Speaking of this, Yami looked towards the ruins and said, however, now, Captain Nozel, you should see that my leader is not making trouble for no reason this time, right? Bastard, I'm going to kill you. Langris, who was knocked into the air, was paralyzed in the ruins, staring like a lunatic, roaring hysterically. Looking at Langris, who was seriously injured but didn't know it, Yami and Nozel's expressions became more serious. Even the members of the Golden Dawn sensed something was wrong. Anyone who encountered such a severe injury would have already fainted. There will be someone, I blindly yelled hysterically. What's going on here? Klaus asked with a full face. At the beginning, He was also dissatisfied with the complete abuse of the dignified deputy head of Golden Dawn. But now, as long as you are not blind, you can see that there is a problem. This kind of injury has long been beyond the range of ordinary people. I'm afraid there is something wrong with Captain Langris. The magic power fluctuated just now, but it was very strange. Yuno couldn't help but looked at it and landed on the ground again. Kuroba, whose body was full of lightning, was unwilling to do so, and finally fell into silence. Captain, I have brought old Owen back. Finneral tore apart the space and came out. Looking at the messy field, he couldn't help but bewildered. Especially in the tragic situation of Langris, he hugged Yami's arm and said anxiously, "You, Captain Yami. Didn't you say that the new leader will be merciful? Why, it will still be like this." Thanks for watching, please like and subscribe.